the Olympics and match racing, and I'm a commentator for the America's Cup. Like you guys here today, I'm so excited about getting led into the top secret area, getting a sneak peek at the build of the AC-72 that Oracle Racing will launch this summer, starting the countdown to 12 months to spectacular action in 2013, next summer. So excited to be a part of this, and I'm so excited that we are sort of the VIPs. Congresswoman Pelosi, Mayor Ed Lee, but not even Larry Ellison have gotten to see the boat that we saw this morning. So are you guys excited about it? Oracle Racing won the 33rd America's Cup. It gave them the right to defend the cup on the home waters here next summer. They won it exactly 2 years ago last week on Valentine's Day. An excellent present for those of us that love sailing. But the countdown to the America's Cup 2013 has begun. Next summer, the Bay Area will be the Bay Arena. One of the oldest and most iconic sporting events in the world will be staged right here in San Francisco. We have a little clip. Let me see if I can do this in 60 seconds or less. The key date, September 7th, 2013. That is race 1 of the America's Cup. Oracle Racing will be taking on the best of the challengers. Oracle Racing has to win the cup to keep the cup in America. The challengers will come through the Challenger Selection Series, the Louis Vuitton Cup. 3 months of racing, also here on the Bay. That's challengers from around the world, countries like Sweden, Italy, New Zealand, and others. Prior to that, all of these countries are competing in the AC World Series, a brand new series that's taking the best sailors in the fastest boats around the world. So far, we've had racing in Portugal, California, and England, and up to 300,000 spectators have gotten to take a chance and a peek at what these boats can do. I've commentated on those races, and I can't tell you how phenomenal it is to see the racing up close and personal, see how physical the boats are, and have it all right on the city front. Pier 27, our city front, currently looks like this, triangular pier. It'll now be this, the new AC Race Village, filled with what we've seen in the America's Cup World Series events, bands, America's Cup shop, entertainment, activities where we can actually try to feel like we're on a sailboat, grinding, getting wet, etc. And the racing will be incredibly accessible on the waterfront. Pier 27, the race village down here, aquatic park, marina green, all open access, racing on the bay with unbelievable action that's impossible to miss. So let's now meet the team whose job it is to keep the America's Cup here in America. Russell Coots. Where are you, Russell? Russell won a gold medal in the LA Games and is the most decorated skipper. I'm going to give you Jimmy's seat and I'm sitting here. Is the most decorated skipper in America's Cup history. How many wins is that, Russell?
Well, that's 3 wins as a helmsman and 1 win as the team leader last time.
And as the team leader, that was a hard job to give up your seat?
Oh, absolutely not. I think we've got the best helmsman in the world right now, Jimmy Spittle, so you're about to meet him next.
Yeah, for the 33rd America's Cup, Russell gave up the driver's role to Jimmy Spittle. Jimmy, come take my seat. Jimmy grew up taking a boat every day to school. At 19, he was the youngest skipper to ever helm an America's Cup boat. Just more than 10 years later, he was the youngest skipper to ever win the America's Cup. Well done, Jimmy. He was helming the boat, USA 17, that you guys saw outside, standing on the top of that boat, 30 feet above the water, going 30 miles per hour. Did you ever fall off?
No, I was lucky, but no, thanks very much, Jenny, and I just want to apologise for my voice today. I was at the Warriors game last night, and it was a fantastic game, and I certainly got amongst it in the crowd, so it was a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, that time around USA 17 really was the catalyst to what we see today in the sport and the event. That really led to a lot of these changes. So that was an exciting boat, but I can tell you right now, these 45s and the 72s are a whole nother level.
Telling Jimmy which way to go around the race course is John Kostecki. John Kostecki is a Bay Area legend and hometown hero, but he is also the first to have ever won the Grand Slam of sailing. He won a medal in the Olympics, he won a race around the world, and ultimately 2 years ago he won the America's Cup. JK, I said hometown hero. Where did you grow up?
Yeah, I grew up here in Marin County in San Rafael.
And I hear you won your first World Championships as a teenager. Where?
Yeah, it was down in Coyote Point and just here in San Mateo, and yeah, it was the sunfish class.
I might have learned to sail on a sunfish. We've talked about Russell's four wins, but how many times did it take you to try before you ultimately won the Cup?
Yeah, I had 5 goes at it before winning with this team in 2010. So.
Not necessarily as good odds. Someone with great odds, though. The designer behind the teams are very important to make the fastest boat, so it's important to have great sailors, but the design team and the boat build team, phenomenal. Dirk Kramers is one of 21 in the Oracle Racing Brands Trust, a formidable combination of naval architects, aerodynamicists, structural engineers, fluid dynamic specialists, and data analysts. Well, that's a mouthful. How are you, Dirk? Dirk can actually top Russell's 4 wins. He has helped design 5 America's Cup winning yachts.
Yeah, but I started a long time ago. I started before you were born, Jenny. So, so it gives me a little bit of an advantage. But my averages are not as good as Russell's.
How many cups did it take for you to get the 5 wins?
Ooh, I think about 10 or 11 or so.
I think our facts say 11.
Okay, you know more than I do.
So a couple questions for these guys before we open it up to the audience. Jimmy, you guys have been training here for a week. How's it been?
Well, it's been fantastic. I mean, the weather's been a little better than we were expecting, being February. But it's great to be back in town. Obviously, we're getting very, very close now to the launch of our first boat, which will be in July during the summer. So for the sailing team, it's just great to be back out on the water, back out on that racetrack, and getting used to what it will be like in a very short amount of time. So we're enjoying it. Certainly enjoying this sunny weather right now, and I hope it continues while we're here.
Is the finish line in sight?
I think it is. I think, now that we've ticked over to 2012 and we're saying the America's Cup is next year, it gives everyone a little bit of a spark, and it's come up very quick. As you can see, there's been a lot of work going on here at the base. You got a little sneak preview of the 72, and that'll be a reality very soon. So for us and the whole team, it's just incredibly exciting.
JK, you've raced around the world and all over it. What's so special about the San Francisco Bay?
Oh, well, you have to say the strong sea breeze in the summertime is, pretty spectacular. Tricky currents, whatnot, but San Francisco's a natural amphitheater, for what we're doing here in the America's Cup, and it's going to be awesome. It's a difficult, quite frankly, a difficult place to race sailboats, but when you get it right, it's quite rewarding.
And Dirk, you said 11 cup cycles. What have you seen change throughout that time?
Oh, the speeds and the types of boats. I mean, what's happening now with the Cup is probably the biggest kick in the ass that the Cup has seen in 70 years or so. And you're going to see it right here, right front and center. You're going to have front row seats here on the bay, and that's going to be fantastic.
I hope I get a front row access seat on board the boat again, Jimmy. Russell, you've seen the Cup sailed in 3 different countries. What's the impact been like?
Well, actually, I was just talking to somebody about that just before the conference. I think the Cup here on San Francisco Bay, like the others sitting up here, will be just spectacular. When you think about it, you people have seen the AC-45 here today, and the AC-72 will have wings twice as high as those. The boats will go somewhere between 2 and 3 times the wind speed. It's frankly going to be spectacular, and when I look at the the coolness of the boats is one factor. I think that this is going to be a great summer of activities, starting July 4th right through to the mid-September. I also think from personal experience, when I look back at places like Fremantle, Australia, where the Cup went in 1987, it was sort of a quiet, pretty run-down fishing port before the America's Cup went there, and it certainly transformed that city. I could talk about Auckland, New Zealand. Same thing happened, except on a bigger scale, probably more relative to San Francisco. And you can look at a lot of other events, like even in my past life, as I was joking earlier, as an Olympian. A city like Barcelona, a lot of people said, well, if you went there today, you'd probably think Barcelona doesn't really need an event like the Olympics. But I can tell you, it just transformed that city, and now it's one of the most popular destinations in the world, frankly, and certainly in Europe. And it, frankly, reconnected the waterfront with the old city. So I think this is much more than a sailing event. I've had people sort of say to me, the America's Cup in San Francisco, it's going to be like a long version of Fleet Week. No, I think that's the wrong image. I think once you picture these spectacular boats, and in many ways, not even like a normal sailboat, these spectacular boats racing in the summer of activities in San Francisco, it's going to be a really, really cool event.
I think we actually have a video to show a little bit what the Cup's been like in the past.
1983, Australia 2 finally broke the New York Yacht Club's 132-year hold on the America's Cup.
I tell you what, any boss who sacks anyone for not setting up the die in the cup.
The Cup in Australia 1987 was very exciting, and I think most Americans really then started discovering sailing.
I made you a personal promise to do everything I could to bring the Cup back home to America where it belongs, so here it is.
The America's Cup is now New Zealand's Cup.
For the first time in 156 years, the America's Cup will be sailed in European waters.
Valencia, Spain, the America's Cup is Americans again.
America's Cup, San Francisco, 2013. The Bay Area will be like the Bay Arena.
So we can open up to some questions from the audience now. We've got a couple of mics to pass around, and I can pass this one around.
You mentioned that the waters are unique here in the Bay Area, and this being your home base, you're going to have obviously much more time than any other teams to be practicing in these waters. Do you see that as a distinct advantage, or are we also going to see other teams come here to practice so that they can be familiar with the area, and is that allowed?
Yeah, well, as being a local, I'd like to think that, I have an advantage, or we have an advantage, but no, it's a good point. We'll see the other teams arriving here this summer, sailing the AC-45s out on the same race course, and they'll all get used to these conditions, and so I think everybody will get a handle of it. It is tricky. It does take a little bit more time than a normal racetrack, but they'll figure it out.
There you go. Pass it down the line.
Let's take one for Dirk. In the rule for the AC-72s, it was originally written so that the boats have a very short framework for breaking apart and rebuilding. You have to be able to take them apart for shipping, put them back together very quickly. Was there any reason why that rule was kept, or was there any consideration to dropping that rule when it became apparent that the 72s are not traveling on a circuit?
Well, it initially was in there to facilitate a worldwide series with these boats, and hopefully when this event continues, and this class hopefully will survive this event, that can still be the case. So we're keeping on with this requirement to take the boats apart quickly and ship them easily. We will be sailing in other places with these boats, and they will have to be shipped even for this cycle of the Cup, so it's still a good feature.
Russell, at the moment there are only 3 challengers. Admittedly, there could be some more before the deadline. Why is that? Can you speculate on that? Is that simply a function of the deteriorating or the down world economy, or is there more to it? Is the litigation a problem for other syndicates? Why is that?
Well, I think, obviously the situation in Europe, it's pretty obvious that would affect things. But right now there's 4 teams. You people have seen one AC-72 under construction. There's 4 teams that are out there building 2 AC-72s. That's our first of 2 boats. And there's 3 other syndicates that are going to be 2-boat programs. For the 1-boat programs, you don't actually have to announce that you're doing it. In fact, anyone doesn't until I think it's June 1st that you have to declare that you have to take the next stage in terms of the AC-72 program. And I know that there's at least one other single-boat program that's gearing up to start building their boat, or they may have even started building their boat now. So I think we will see other teams other than the, let's call it the big 4 teams. But hey, in actual fact, even 8 of these AC-72s out there on San Francisco Bay, frankly, I think that's going to be a pretty cool thing to see. And in a way, whilst it'd be nice to have 20 other teams out there, because great to have teams from Korea and China and France and these other countries coming here. That's no question, it would be great. But in terms of the competition, I actually think the 4 teams that currently have, let's say the 2-boat programs underway, I think all of them are very, very competitive. So in a competitive sense, and somebody, I think John Craig was talking to me before, at the end of the day, the America's Cup's going to be about the best challenging team racing the team from the US in the America's Cup final. There's going to be, in other words, there's going to be 2 teams left at the end, and I think that race will be as competitive as any we've seen in the last, well, certainly in my America's Cup experience. And I think the Louis Vuitton Cup, because of the quality of the teams there right now, again, will be as competitive as the previous Louis Vuitton Cups that I've seen. So yes, nice to have more teams, but frankly, if we don't, I still think this is going to be a spectacular event. The reason why, I would say, frankly, the economy is contributing to that. The situation in Europe is making it tough for those European teams, and frankly, the other teams to raise the money.
Russell,
are we going to see a contender series amongst you guys out in public? Are we going to see Oracles compete against each other externally, or is this all going to happen in-house?
I can answer that. Yeah, there is a program. Actually, there's a program laid out now, some tentative programs on the schedule of racing, and Oracle Racing will be racing our 2 boats at the same time that the Louis Vuitton series is going on. So we're scheduled to race first, I think, on most of those days.
Russell.
In fact, John Craig's here, but we're scheduled to race first, and then the challengers will race thereafter.
Now, Russell, speaking of teams, you've got 2 great teams. When will you, as CEO, begin to decide who is going to be the one team, because you can't race the 2 teams, as you know?
Well, I won't decide that. Those sort of decisions. I think it's becoming obvious, and frankly, we have a pretty good idea about who our sailing team will be now, and we're gearing everything towards supporting that. One of the things that I sort of experienced as defender in the past is you really need to have that competitive series leading up to the America's Cup match itself, Because if you don't have a really good in-house program, imagine going out and racing the best challenger cold, effectively cold. So one of our big challenges is to figure out how we can develop a competitive internal race program that prepares our team even better than the challenges. It's a tough thing to do, but I think we definitely have the capability to do that. And hopefully, when Jimmy and the guys head out there for the start of race 1, the objective would be, hey, this race is actually certainly no more difficult than the racing that we've had leading up to it.
Is that right? 272, so you can compete against each other?
Question here on the side.
I just wonder, is that why you have the 272, so you can compete against each other and get that going?
Well, you're only allowed to build 2, but that's certainly one of the reasons. It's one of the reasons why we're developing 2 teams. But really, as I said, there's 4 teams that are building 272s, or 4 that I know of. And so I guess they'll all be out there racing or testing their boats.
How much is this course reduced in size from previous courses? Or is it?
Well, actually, it's probably going to be about the same size, but these boats are so fast that the time to take to complete this race course.
And the shape is basically the same as previous?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, we have looks like we're going to incorporate a reaching start, which is a little bit different than traditional America's Cups, but and a reaching finish at the Pier 27. But the actual length is pretty similar to the past America's Cups. It's just that these boats are so much faster. It's going to be a lot shorter in time.
I'd say that this course look like it's going to be really good for the short time span on TV. But since the original Cup was won on a race around an island, is there any consideration to doing maybe a Bay Tour exhibition before or after other competitions, like to go around Angel and come back through? Just for exhibition, it would just be really cool. Give everybody a chance in different parts of the bay to see you.
Well, I'll probably see the boats hooting around there in practice, that's for sure, in various parts of the bay. But obviously, one of the things that our sport was challenged with in the past was the television broadcasters used to say, "How long is this race?" in terms of time, and the answer was, well, it could be anywhere from 40 minutes to 3 hours to maybe the race will never get finished on that day, And of course, that was one of the other reasons why to go to these high-speed boats was that we can run a really, as J.K. said, quite a long race, which gives the athletes a chance to really, determine which team's the best on the water. But we can also much better control the television time, so we can say to the broadcasters, 35 minutes, that's the length of the race, and that's what's delivered. And broadcasters have been, very happy with what's happened in our first 3 events.
Well, I'm talking about separate from the regular broadcast, just for exhibition, but TV
Well, maybe, why not?
I think they'll be sailing around. We can't miss them. Question back here.
Yes, Russell, Ben Ainsley, one of UK's top sailors heading to the Olympics in the Finn class, has announced a partnership with Oracle Racing. Could you clarify what his role will be following the Olympics with AC4 and the America's Cup World Series, as well as what he might be doing in an AC-72?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think the future of sailing and the future of the America's Cup, frankly, is these boats. We certainly believe, having sailed them for a while, is going to suit these younger Olympic athletes much more than the old style boats. So sailors like Ben and other Olympic sailors that we've also got guys like Tom Schlingsby, who's a top contender for an Olympic gold medal at these games. They're now coming in, and previously there wouldn't have really been or it would have taken them years to develop a position on the old boats. now they really have a chance of being on the race boat. And Ben, so Ben's coming in. He's actually, one of his objectives in the future is to have his own team from the UK. But for this America's Cup, he's coming in. He's partnered with us, and he's going to be hopefully pushing Jimmy and the guys out on the water as hard as we can, and getting them ready for the America's Cup final.
Question here.
Hey, Jimmy, as specific as you can, talk about the input the sailing teams had on the design of your AC-72.
Oh, a huge impact. I mean, at the end of the day, the sailing team, they're the end user, really the customer. So they've had to have a big influence in the boat. And it's incredibly exciting, not only for the design guys, but for the sailors, because it's really is a blank sheet of paper. You know, with the old class, we went through a few iterations, and we all sort of knew how it was going to be laid out. But now there's a lot of challenges. You know, obviously we've got 2 hulls now, we've got a trampoline, trying to figure out the deck layout, how we're going to get through these manoeuvres, and do all of this in a very, very short race is going to be very, very challenging. And it's something that goes on in a daily process. That discussion with the design team and with the build team as well.
Any more questions?
Paul Elias here with the Associated Press. Question for Russell. It's not a done deal yet with the San Francisco supervisors. You still have final approval, and there are still some details to work out. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. How hopeful are you that you can tie up this deal by, I guess, next week? And then secondly, if not, is there a plan B? And if so, what is that? And you're obviously invested in San Francisco here, but it's not a done deal yet, correct?
No, it's not. I mean, we certainly, frankly, I would, hope that things can be, every reason to believe that things will be resolved by the end of this month, and as I said, this will be a spectacular event. I'm not sure that the Board of Supervisors actually realise what they've got here, in terms of how positive this event will be for San Francisco. I think on the one hand, I can say that I feel the America's Cup's lucky to have San Francisco. I'm not sure San Francisco has yet realised how lucky it is to have the America's Cup. So that's a process, and hopefully by the end of 2013, we'll look back on this and say, just like no doubt there were some objections with AT&T Stadium when it was first proposed, but I think most people would agree that it's a good thing that success won through in the end, and the AT&T Park is there. It's a fantastic facility.
Do you have a plan B? Sorry. Do you have a plan B if things don't work out?
We don't really have a plan B. We plan on success, and plan B, no, that doesn't really enter into our thinking right now.
Thank you.
You don't win with plan B, you win with plan A. Dark blue in the black.
Al Sarasovic from Chronicle, excuse my voice. Question about that time of year, early September in San Francisco could be very foggy. Just wondering what contingency plans would be if the bay is socked in. Maybe this is a question for Mr. Kostecki, who grew up sailing here, or any one of you. But what happens if we're completely socked in with fog? I'd imagine that would be a little dangerous.
Well, yeah, September's the weather patterns here start to change a little bit. It actually is, there's in general less fog in September, which is good for us. But yeah, it's more of most likely a question for the race committee if it's really socked in. But September, from my experience, is normally quite good and clear. And wind-wise, yeah, it's more on the decline of the sea breeze, but you're still going to get pretty good wind, 15, 20 knots on average in September.
For the boat designer, how is this technology gonna spread out to the world? I know more and more you see the wing sail being used throughout, and for young sailing programs, they have a disadvantage, I feel, because they practice on just the regular rig sailing boats, and this technology you don't get to on unless you are selected, right, as a professional sailor. Is this technology going to be spreading out through the world, or is it just confined to America's Cup competitions?
No, it will trickle down, as they say. We're already seeing that the wing, as Oracle used it 2 years ago, has already had a big influence on what's happening in high-performance sailing. But we're also spending quite a lot of time, and Jimmy already alluded to this, on trying to figure out how to make deck layouts work, how to power these boats. These boats are going to be very demanding on the crew, and we need to develop systems to help these guys sail this boat. And those systems will trickle down on the event. As for the junior sailors, I think we need to provide a dream for them, a goal for them to aspire to sail these kinds of boats. And even though they may not be able to afford fancy big catamarans quite yet, I think it is a nice example and a dream for them to look forward to.
Yeah, I think just adding to that, there is a plan in place for the Youth America's Cup. It'll be held between the Louis Vuitton Cup and the America's Cup match. And I think I can say that there'll be an announcement about the Youth America's Cup coming up, fairly soon.
I'm Julia Sulek with the San Jose Mercury News. Dirk, I'm hoping you can talk to us about the conflict between designing for speed versus safety, and maybe the two of you can talk about whether in some ways you feel like gladiators out there. Russell, you took a big dive that everyone was excited to watch. Anyway, if you could answer that.
Yes, I mean, with speed comes certain dangers, and which is unlike previous cups. We're starting to see sailors sailing with life jackets and helmets. This is a new thing, and so we're certainly taking the safety aspect quite seriously. But it will be interesting, and we're treading on new ground here. We just need to be very careful that we don't step over the line.
I think on the sailing side, there is obviously a lot more risk now with the boats. I mean, as you said, people are excited when they see Russell go through the wing. Honestly, I'm still excited when I see him go through the wing. And if he does it again, I'll be even more excited. And I'm sure he'll have a certain feeling if I do it. But at the end of the day, as a sport, if there's more risk, it's more challenging for the athletes. I think it's more exciting. I mean, in a race car, the harder you push, the faster you go. And in the past, in these boats, there just hasn't been any real risk. I mean, maybe you tear a sail, maybe you might bump the boats together, but you couldn't really mess it up. Now, on a 72, there's some serious consequences. But if you push, you're rewarded for it. So I think for the what's called the Everest of sailing, the America's Cup, it needs to be like that. It's not for the average person. This is right on the edge, and the team that pushes hard will be rewarded, and that's exactly the way it should be.
Yeah, there's no doubt that even experienced sailors will walk down to the event village on the Triangular Pier in 2030 and look at these boats and recognise that they probably couldn't get one of these boats around the course. Now that's something that when I go along to a Formula One race and I walk past one of the top cars, I get a buzz because I'm looking at this car and I can drive a car okay on the road, but I probably couldn't get around a Formula One track in one of those cars. And so this is really going to test the top sailors in the world. This is going to test their skills and identify who is the best team.
And just to follow up on that, this has been known as a design competition and a yacht race. Is one more important than the other? Different this year?
It's always been the sailors that are way more important than anything, dude.
I disagree. It's always the fastest boat that wins.
No, I think this time we were pretty careful. We wanted to create a good challenge for the sailors, and that's why it's not just about the boats. We've put boundaries on the course and all sorts of changes that have made this a real test of sailing school skill. And I think that as far as the rule goes, it's what we call a box rule. So the boats will all be the same length, they'll all be effectively the same width, the same weight, and more or less the same power as well. So all of the main, let's say, performance drivers are very tightly controlled, because I think, you know, people really want to see a good race. And one of the things about these the multi-hull racing that we've already seen in the America's Cup World Series is there is a lot of passing. The reason that there is a lot of passing is because the crews, you know, make mistakes and the other boats are able to capitalise on it. So we're seeing a lot more passing than what we have in the previous style of racing, and I think that's a good thing.
Exploring that theme just a little bit farther, JK, your role on the boat is tactician. That means you're supposed to figure out which way the boat's going to go next and why. But the boats are also very physical. You're pretty busy on the deck of that boat. How much are you able to get your head out of that boat relative to other kinds of racing?
Well, I mean, the AC-45 is a good example. It's, you know, you nailed it, Kimball. It's a lot more physical, you know, I'm a lot more active on the 45, and you know, my head's down, you know, a lot of the time, and so everybody on board the boat helps contribute, and you know, the helmsman or Jimmy would ultimately make the final decision. So 72 is going to be very much the same. You know, going to be a lot of people grinding, pulling the ropes, whatnot. It's going to be quite challenging. So we're going to have to, you know, none of us have sailed on the 72 yet. So we're going to have to find that out this summer, the right balance of how much to look up the racetrack and figure out which way to go versus, you know, pulling in a sail.
Last question for someone in the back. Oh, great. Okay. My question, how physical is it, Jimmy? What's the training you guys are doing every day?
Well, I know my crew will be smiling that I'm answering this question because I do the least amount of work on the boat. But having said that, the boats, even these 45s for the helmsman, are incredibly physically. I mean, for the crew, it's relentless. It just does not stop. I mean, from the start gun, a 30-minute race, from the start gun to the finish line, they're operating at their max heart rate. And we've got the facts to prove that. And you will see that during the racing when we show that as well live. So, and if you just hear them on board, I mean, we have a running joke between the skippers that we really like these boats because in the past, if we got stuck into the crew about making a mistake or something, they'd be able to answer back. Now, they are so tired and worn out, they can't even muster up the energy to answer back at you. So, but look, they are relentless. The physical training is an important part. I mean, the guys powering these boats are really our engine. And the more horsepower you get, the faster you'll be. And the faster you'll do those manoeuvres. And if you can do that just a little bit more, a little bit better than the other team, it'll be a huge advantage. It'll be like having a bigger engine in a race car. So we're training hard. We're still learning about the types of training. It's completely new training. And the old boats, you would basically just stand there on a grinding pedestal and you'd be there for the day. Now you're running around. You need a real mix of skill and athleticism. And everyone's just taken it on and really enjoyed the challenge. It's it really has, as Russell said, alluded, it's probably brought the age level down. It's great for kids, I think, to have that dream of, well, look, if I want to get there, I've really got to be well-rounded. I can't just be a fantastic tactician or sailor. I've got to be a good athlete. And on the flip side, I can't just be an incredible guy in the gym that's huge and strong. I've got to be a great sailor too and be able to think a couple of steps ahead and anticipate. So, yeah, I mean, these boats are physical and it's going to take a lot of work to get to the level that'll be required to race.
Awesome. Well, speaking of work, thank you guys very much. Can we give them a round of applause? Thanks for sharing secrets. I think I'm